Everybody. So yes, I'm Paul Swinney from the think tank Centre for Cities. We're a non-partisan think tank that looks at the economies of the 63 largest towns and cities across the country. Now, interestingly, for a think tank that talks about the benefits of face-to-face interaction, actually, is as we've all been sort of dispersed in our little atomized cells in our kitchens and bedrooms across the country doing our jobs, actually, the Centre for Cities has been very much part of the conversation, which is what is the future of cities and what's going to happen for work from home. So actually, sort of COVID pandemic has brought quite a lot of attention to the work that we do, which is great. And a question we get asked a lot, and it seems that in the media this question is coming ever louder again, is as we start to open up again, is everyone going to start working from home now? And are cities and city centres in particular dead? Well, I don't think so. And actually, it was interesting, I think, to see the results from the poll and from what Dominic has just said there, because I think I'm probably about to echo some of what was found there. So why the reasons why I don't think that's the case? Well, if we look at the 20 to 30 years before the pandemic hit, what we'd seen was that despite the rise of all these new technologies, be it first off email, then through to Skype, then through to more sophisticated things like Zoom as we're using today, over that period, actually, instead of seeing jobs becoming more dispersed, jobs become more concentrated. So despite the ability to actually have these digital interactions, what we've seen is that businesses, particularly high-skilled businesses and professional services firms especially, clustering within successful city centres. So that's London, Birmingham and Manchester and Leeds in the context of the UK and Glasgow. In the context of the US, we've seen that happen in San Francisco, New York, et cetera, as well. These superstar cities in the US that have become magnets to these types of businesses. Now, those businesses have gone there despite the costs of doing so. You know, it's really expensive to hire commercial space. It's expensive in terms of commuting costs. It's expensive in terms of congestion and pollution as well. And yet businesses have chosen to do that. So I was finding the conversation that we're having sort of around the start of the pandemic by saying businesses are going to stop paying all this expensive rent now is a little bit of a surprise, I would say, because if they then decided that they weren't going to pay it now, why on earth were they deciding that they were going to pay it before? You know, why were they sort of swallowing that rent check every month or every quarter when they saw the size of it, when in principle they could have worked from home or sent their staff to remote? And indeed, some companies had done that, but it was quite a small share. Now, the answer to that is because of the value of what you actually buy. What do you get by buying or renting city centre real estate? And that is the benefit of bringing people together. It's that face-to-face interaction to swap that tacit knowledge, as Dominic was talking about, you know, that sort of water cooler moment where you're exchanging ideas, which happens spontaneously rather than arranged at 3 o'clock on a Teams call, for example. It's those conversations that are flying around the office. But I also think it's the that sort of the middle of that call that Dominic was talking about, as well as probably the bottom of the hierarchy as well. Those colleagues who are new on their career paths, sitting there and absorbing this information and learning on the job by hearing sort of what people are doing or seeing their boss conduct him or herself in a way which somebody who's got 20 or 30 years experience in the industry does. And I think particularly a challenge I think I've found personally from a management perspective is not only just managing people remotely, but also about trying to get people on board when they've then joined the centre, and my worries about how quickly they're able to assimilate the knowledge the centre has, assimilate the culture the centre has, when actually not being exposed to it all of the time. Now, this isn't to say that I think maybe we'll see everybody return back 5 days fully. And I think that, again, the survey suggested that maybe there will be some more flexibility in between. But I think from an organisational perspective, at the very least, and these conversations tend to happen from the perspective of the employee. So let's think about from the terms of the organisation. I think for certain types of organisation, especially professional services firms, having those people together in one room interacting is really important in terms of creating new ideas to drive the business on in the longer term. And I think it feels as if now that we're starting to come to that bit of a crunch, that for a year we've been able to operate on all of the relationships we built pre-pandemic and the ideas we built pre-pandemic, but feels like some of that maybe is starting to break down a little bit. And be interested to get people's comments on that in the chat after. Now, to finish off, let me sort of summarize through an anecdote of the eyes of one CEO about how the pandemic has played out. In that, so Jess Staley, who's the CEO of Barclays, started off at the pandemic in April 2020 by saying that maybe the days of the big expensive office is dead, which I think he was referring to his Canary Wharf tower, which if you're anywhere in London, you can pick out at night time quite easily. But his tune has changed subtly over that time. And there's been a number of things he said, but I'll pick out two. In January of this year, he said that working from home was not sustainable. And then this month, I believe, he also said that working from home is getting old. Now, I think that probably illustrates, and this won't apply to everybody, of course, but I think it probably illustrates the journey that we've been on over the last 12 months, where when we embraced this and realized actually it was working better than what we thought it was going to be, everything was fantastic. And gradually, as we've been going through the pandemic, we've then realized that there is actually a benefit of being in the office. And it is actually quite difficult to get certain things done. Some things done better from home, but some things definitely not. And then we've had the comments from Jez, but also the comments from the Goldman Sachs CEO, who said that working from home is an aberration, because of its inability to, or its difficulties in order to sort of educate and skill the younger staff. So from that perspective, I think that we will see a return. It may not be 5 days, it may not be this year, but I think we will see this gradual drift back to the office because of the benefits that human interaction brings.